Aware.
What it do, baby?
Oh my gosh.
What it do, baby?
We are here for another one. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm here today with a good friend of mine. Somebody who's actually been here for the entire rise of my career, essentially. Um, I call you KK,
Yeah.
but your real name is Katleho.
Yes, sir.
And you are a legitimate certified industry editor.
Certified freak. 7 days a week.
So, like, my bro, like, we started in the gutter.
Yeah.
We started in the gutter. And
What
I think,
most people would call it. Yeah.
and I think a lot of people don't understand that. So we went to film school, right? We went to AFDA. But you were on the television side of AFDA, which at AFDA is like the redheaded stepchild.
Yeah. If you want to describe it as something at after, it's so like on the side. Like nobody really cares about it. And I think that was kind of like the mission we had with Sito, was that it was such an underlook. I mean, they expected us to shoot our final production on P2 Panasonic cameras. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, but the type of things that we're trying to make don't allow for that. You know what I mean? And you have a lecturer who's telling you, no, if you just put the camera really far away and zoom in, you'll get your depth of field. You'll get your depth of field. If you just zoom in, but you gotta go really far away and just zoom in and get your frame. That's how you get your depth of field. So, yeah, that's why I call it the incest baby of after. Because it's not like by calling it a stepchild, you're giving it some sort of dignity. Yeah. There was no sense of that,
So
if I would call it that.
what I found happened a lot of the time is that the TV kids, we never really had support.
Yeah.
So especially when you guys were in second year, everyone expected you to fail and nobody was there to support you.
Like incest babies, yes. Exactly. That's precisely my point.
But now, through that difficulty, you gained a work ethic.
So one thing I will say is that, like, one thing I will forever be grateful for TV about that the film school lacked in is the way they allow you to sort of delve into the different disciplines.
Yeah.
Film school is very like cutthroat, like, and narrow. I mean, first and second year, sure, they let you explore, but by the time you get to third year, in film school, if you're a cinematographer, you're a cinematographer. If you're a color grader, you're a color grader. If you're a director or a writer, that's your discipline. That is what you do. You know, whereas TV, all the way until we got into third year, I think they did this thing where we were allowed to explore all the way until the end. And I will always say this, that in terms of real life and after, I will always say that TV school will always be better for an individual than film school. Because I think film school causes kids to believe that you leave after and you're going to be a director, or you're going to be a cinematographer, or you're going to be a DOP, or you're going to be a post-production supervisor. You know, all of those things. That's what film school teaches you. Because they teach you the end goal, but they don't teach you the stuff where it's like, I kind of need to work before I get there. I kind of need to build my experience before I get there. You know, I kind of need to build some form of credibility before I get there. Like, that information is great, but the information you're providing me is information that I need for when I've been working in this industry for at least 5 years.
Exactly.
You know, so I think that's where I'm like, although TV school is the incest baby of AFDA, I will always say that it's the better baby out of all of the babies that AFDA produces.
Because essentially, whilst you were in TV school, you edited, you color graded, you directed, and you shot. And subsequently, when you left TV school and you started working at
I
Digital
still do
Union,
that to this day.
you were editing, you were shooting, and something that people don't realize is that in the professional world, when you edit, you have to have a bit of a director's mind in
In
that you're
South
not just,
Africa,
yeah,
specifically, South Africa specifically.
in that, and correct me if I'm wrong, in that you're not just piecing together footage, you're telling a tale using the footage, not just through the narration.
That is true. I mean, so when I left after, fortunately, because my dad is in the industry, he got me my first interview. And I got hired on the spot. I literally submitted my show reel. I always tell people, if you're gonna turn me down for a job, turn me down before you meet me,
Mm-hmm.
because once you meet me, you're gonna give me that job. So they met me and we spoke, and by the time I left that day, they were like, so can you start tomorrow? And yeah, I started the next day. I started as a camera assistant, assistant editor, and I still don't know what the role you would call this is, but basically, I ended up managing the post facility in terms of editing. So that mainly dealt with like archiving their footage of everything that they shot and making sure that they're able to access everything from all. So this is me directly dealing with IT for the servers, and be like, yo, dude, our server is really slow today. And then I'd have to log IT in to our systems and literally spend the day trying to sort of sort that out, to the point where we started having to call them less and less, because I wasn't a person to be like, this is your job, so do it. I would literally sit and watch what IT is doing so that I could learn, so that I'm like, so that next time we don't have to call you, because if you're not available, then what? But we still have like shit that we have to deliver. You get me? So I started at Digital Union.
And Digital Union isn't a place. They're one of the leading, not just post production houses, but one of the leading digital animation houses in South Africa.
So I wouldn't say post-production house. I wouldn't consider Digital Union that. I think production and editing and post-production is a very minuscule part of what they actually do. So they deal a lot with 3D animation. They deal with a lot of visual effects. That's the stuff that they work in. There's a friend of ours, Lindor. He did a Lay's commercial. So Digital Union didn't work on this particular production, but just to give you an example. So when they do productions, like for instance, like Lay's, the specific one I'm talking about that Lindor did. Now, when you see a packet of chips and the chips are just falling into the packet of chips, those aren't actual chips. There is no camera that can get you that depth, because chips also don't fall like that. I don't know where you've seen chips that fall as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They don't fall like that. They fall like if you put a packet of chips into another packet of chips, it's just a
It's one.
it's just like a fucking, just all of them at once. So that's 3D animation. That's what 3D animation is. It deals with, especially in the commercial space, it deals with recreating the things that brand have created, and sort of recreating it in a way that it meets the brief of the client and the vision of the director. And that's a lot of the stuff that Digital Union does. So we can go through a lot of stuff that I've obviously witnessed. But fortunately not for me, the reason why I got the job is that because production is such a minuscule part of what they do, they didn't have anyone in-house that dealt with that stuff. So that's why I ended up having to do your production. I ended up having to do your post-production. I ended up having to deal with servers. Ended up having to deal with IT. I ended up having to conversate with a lot of other people in terms of how to run this in the most efficient way possible, to the point where when I got my first documentary series, which won a SAFTA for Best Educational Documentary.
Let's go.
Kick It, which was season 2.
Let's go.
When I did that, I was assistant editor, but if you pay attention to my credits in that production, I was assistant editor. I was offline editor. I was online editor. I was, and if you're talking about things that didn't have a name in terms of the role that I provided, is I was running that whole server. So if people had a problem with the server, they didn't go to anyone but me. But because I was the assistant editor, I was always there. So like it was a matter of if there's a problem with your server or if there's a problem and the system is seeming slow, I was the one that you speak to sort that out for you. You know what I mean? And I would literally in a matter of no more than 30 minutes. If you just give me 30 minutes to be like, okay, I see a problem, go for lunch. You know, I'll tell the offline editors go for lunch. And once they go for lunch, by the time they come back, everything is sorted.
Nice.
And it was a surreal experience because that was also the first time I met so many black editors in our industry as well. Because for the biggest part, I mean, even at Digital Union, I was the only black person for 3 years. Even when I left, I was leaving as the only black person. So I left just the white people there and an Asian man. So, yeah, man, like, I think that's the biggest thing I would always like say is that like, ultimately, when you stop looking at color and you just start looking at people, a lot of your stifling in your own career will just be minimized. Because I think the pressure for a black man to be in that environment is sort of what slows you down. Because you think that there's this whole... just do your job, bro. Just do your job. To the best of your capability, just do your job.
Exactly.
Because ultimately, if you do your job, there's nothing that anyone... To this day, even after I left Digital Union, they hire me as a freelancer, paying me sometimes triple to the salary that they were paying me at the time I was working there earning a salary. And that's what a testament it is in terms of just being versatile.
Now, speaking of that versatility, whilst we're on that point there,
Sure.
At Digital Union, you didn't just do one type of production.
Sure.
And even outside of Digital Union, you were hustling.
Sure.
So now I know within Digital Union, they had you editing things such as Carte Blanche. But outside of Digital Union, at that exact same time, I remember when I first moved to Johannesburg, we were working on things like Nadia Nakai music videos, her launch, visual content gang work, aka music videos, and Nati videos. Can we talk about that a little?
So, fortunately enough for me is, I think the biggest problem we have is the understanding that the worst thing that someone can say is no. So even when I started at Digital Union, I made it very clear to them that, like, look, guys, like, I do want to be here and I want to be here full time and I want to commit all my time to you. I just want you to understand that if I receive work from outside of here, I will take it. Even if it's on a freelance basis, it's not me quitting my job, but I will take days off work here for me to be able to do my other work outside. And they were like, yeah, sure. But I think it's also how you word it. You know, when you're working for a company, you also got to realize that you got to make your employer feel like, you got to make your employer realize how this benefits them. So how I sort of like placed it and how I worded it was that, so I understand how a minuscule part of production plays in terms of your overall company.
Yeah.
So because of that, I'm doing a lot of the same work.
Yeah.
So, I mean, at this point, I've done over 30 Carte Blanche stories. But even at that, I've only edited officially as an offline editor. I've only edited like maybe 2. You know, the rest of them was assistant camera operator. Was assistant camera, was camera operator, and it was assistant editor. But never had I really had the opportunity until last year to edit my own Carte Blanche story. So I think that's kind of how you're able to do the things that you're mentioning now. I mean, if you think about that whole VCG time period.
Visual content gang.
Yeah, if you think about that whole time period, it wasn't because I was asked for because I'm talented or I'm great. I was asked for because it was fucked.
Okay. Now let's talk about that. Okay, so
If we're being honest, like I'm not gonna try and make myself feel like I was sought out and somebody was like heard about my name and they're like, this is the guy we need for this job.
okay, let's break it down for the people at home. All right. So at the time, my mentor Batandwa, who was the head of the visual content gang,
Sure.
he had given me my first big break after doing Yo MTV Raps Africa.
Sure.
That season was over. Nadia Nakai was the host of Yo MTV Raps Africa, and now Nadia was doing her first ever album launch, Nadia Naked.
Mm-hmm.
And this was before. This is when there were still arguments about who the biggest female rapper was.
Not anymore because she's the only one with a legitimate album.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, like that's the reality. You can't.
Also,
like,
she's
can't
the only
argue
one who's
that.
applying pressure on these motherfuckers.
So
I remember sitting there, like, when we worked with her squad, like, the thing for me that was, like, crazy is how ruthless they were, but they did it like a lady. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, it was like, we're ruthless, we're here, we're going to take this shit, but I'm still going to be feminine, I'm still going to be beautiful, I'm going to act like a lady.
What I will say is that anyone can come for Nadia and her bars and whatever, and they may say that lyrically, people, you know what social media said, you know what the public believes of her. You know what I mean in terms of that aspect. All I'm gonna say is that find me another female rapper that has accomplished what she has in the time that she has.
Do it.
You can talk about her bars, it's fine. But you must remember when they start talking about the best female rapper, it's not just about your bars or like how great a rapper. It's about your impact in society, firstly, to other females within either the industry or in the country as a whole. And secondly, it's about your body of work. Now, if you're talking about body of work, I can't name another female rapper's album.
Yeah.
I'll ask you that.
I literally, Rouge, I'm so sorry. Fifi Cooper, I'm so sorry. I could not name one of your albums if somebody put a gun to my motherfucking skull.
And the thing is, I'm not saying that those other female rappers are not talented. I'm not saying that they're not, great at their jobs. They're probably fantastic at their jobs. I'm sure they're great lyricists as well. But ultimately, when it comes down to it, it's like being an editor. It's like being a producer. It's a lot more than just being able to write a contract.
Exactly.
It's a lot better than being able to put clips on a timeline. Exactly. And likewise, I think that it's a lot more than being able to write words on a page.
So now, like, just to go back so at that point in time, Nadia was about to do that launch, all right?
Sure.
At Shine Studios, and I was the production coordinator for that event.
Sure.
And we were putting together the video content for that event. And part of it was they were making a sculpture of Nadia, so we were there when they were like putting the gel over her face to make the bust of her.
The green one.
Yeah, and then we had
no one knows that it was actually
nobody
green.
knows it was green because we edited the video black and white. We had to make essentially 3 music videos in a day or something.
Sure.
It was the music video for Trappy. It was the music video for the one sex one. I don't know. I think it might be called Love, but it's the one where she's in lingerie.
I think
it's Love. It's the one where she's in lingerie in her apartment.
Dane would be a better person to speak about those things.
And then it's Amai. And then it's Amai.
The one that I did, yeah.
And then it's Amai, which is the one where it's the video of her actually getting sculpted. And I remember after we finished the Amai video, Batandwa was sitting there looking at the edit. I thought he was going to tear up. He was just like, I think this is the most beautiful thing I've ever shot. I still remember. This is the most beautiful thing I've ever shot. But it was fucked. It was fucked. It was deep. The deadlines were intense. And I'm pretty sure we called you in at like the dead of the night.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. I don't think it's because I was the best man for the job. I think I was just the person who answered his phone. And I'm okay with that. Look, and I think that's how I've been blessed enough to be that person for a long period of time for me to get a lot of the work that I do now. That experience was surreal. As I said, so initially Dane was called, and I think he was overloaded because he was dealing with Trappy and he was dealing with Love. I think y'all are gonna put a text at the bottom to sort of confirm the actual name if love isn't what it's called. But that's besides the
So
point.
funny.
Yeah, so he was dealing with those two. And visually, I will not lie to you. Visually, I was very hyped because I was like, why are you gonna give me the fucking least visually stimulating one out of all three? And I had to make it work.
But it became the best video.
No, I had to make it work, but that's my point. Is that I had to make it work. Because I think one thing that I've learned is that, and it goes back to what you were saying earlier about sort of making something out of nothing, is that you come up with all sorts of tricks, all sorts of things, but a lot of things start to look gimmicky. Like if you do the same effect over and over again, it's a gimmick because it's like, you know what I mean? I mean, look at, there's a part in that video where it's a time lapse of her getting scouted. And in that same time lapse, I slow it down and then it goes into real time. It's like, yeah, as I explain it, it sounds, yeah, you know, but when you watch it and you see where it's placed in the video, you start to realize that, oh, okay, so the previous frame was when Nadia is in a room, it's a static. Do you know what I mean? It's just after she's lifted up her head and now you're introduced to the character that is in this music video, which is the establishment of the character. If you go into the theory of film, essentially, is your establishment. I feel like there's film in everything. Even if it doesn't make sense, there's film in everything. You can, especially video related, you just have to find those elements that make it that. And once you find those elements, that's why you can say that it might be, in your opinion, the best video out of the three. In your opinion. It's very an opinion. It's a very subjective thing. Yes. I believe. I don't think it can be objective because, unfortunately, our industry is not based on X's and O's, or ones and zeros rather. It's not based on ones and zeros. It's not binary. It's like, it's literally based on the public's opinion. It's not based on you, myself, Sheldon, Spa. It's not based on anyone else outside of the public. You just do your best based on your vision and your understanding, based on the footage that's in front of you, and hope that it's received in the best way possible. So, yeah, man, I think that was the experience of that. It was difficult because I remember it was, I think, maybe 3 nights that I worked on that because I was still working my full-time job at Digital Union. I would leave my full-time job, come back, like, edit that, smoke a lot of weed in that time. Because I was like, I cannot be at least a little bit high and a little bit of sativa. You know what I mean?
I cannot confirm nor deny that I was there.
Oh, no. I said myself. I'm not talking about anyone else that was there. I had to, and like, for me, it's just, you know, people will tell you how when they smoke weed, it slows time down. And that's basically what it is. But the difference is, if you're productive when that time is slowed down, you realize how much work you can get done. You know, so...
But if you're a puss, you're a puss.
Yeah, no. If you just, hey, guys, yeah, like, this episode's on, I think, guys, it's a great show, Nah. Ultimately, you're not productive in any way in that sense. But, like, yeah, in that time, it was just a lot. Because for 3 days straight, I basically didn't sleep for 3 days.
Yeah.
Because I would work my full-time job, go edit that video, wake up in the morning. Well, let me not say wake up. Let me say drive home to get changed to go to work the next morning. Go to work, finish work, come back, continue. Same cycle for 3 days.
Until the launch itself.
And
then the launch was a murder.
It was fire. The launch was fire. I was there with Sito, who shot it. Well, let me say one of the people that shot it. And I spent the day just sort of, because of my background in assistant camera, I could be his camera assistant today.
Yeah, and you guys were running around doing the interviews with the celebs in the crowd.
Yeah, I think that was the first day I saw Bontle and Pretty Ugly together.
Yeah.
No shade, but how short they are as well. That was the first time. I was like, oh, so, all right.
But just real quick, before we get into this one too much, I want to ask you, so one thing I've known about you is that you've always had a massive appreciation for music. And that appreciation and love for music has spread into production of music videos.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell me about some of the music videos that you've worked on that are near to your heart?
Benny Chill, Yebo, I really enjoyed that just because it had a narrative as well. I enjoy narrative-based music videos. I'm not going to go into before my time in the professional industry because, wow, if people can never see those music videos... If people can
even
never see those, I'll be so happy if people can never see those music videos.
If you know, you know. Yeah. That's all I'm going to say. If you know, you know.
There was a lot, Steve. There was a lot that I did before. But yeah, Benny Chill, Yebo, Nadia Nakai are mine. Huma Segela's tribute. Sorry, Sheldon, you good? Oh, Huma Segela's tribute for Tumamina. With Tando Somazwai, Zolani. I mean, dude, I can't even go into the depth of how many prominent people were on the production of that recreation. I did Faku and...
That's Imali.
Yeah, Imali. Who are those boys, dude? I don't know who those boys are. I always forget their names, but I know them as
Black Diamond.
Yeah, Black Diamond. Utanya Devs.
Woko! Baka.
I actually still have like stills of them, funny enough. Because I take stills of people in every music video I've worked on. Just for the memory of for me to be able to reference the music video that I did to that time. So yeah, I did that as well.
There's two recent ones you're forgetting.
Yeah, the most recent one I did was Paradise by AKA.
I took you to paradise.
Yeah, which was interesting. Look, dude, I'm not really coming at anyone, or I'm not trying to sound funny, but I just think in South Africa, I just really wish we could have a lot of trust and a lot more trust in like the creators behind the vision of the music video than we do. I just think that we have a lot of artists who want to be directors, who want to be behind the vision of their own music video. And it kind of gets to me because it's like, then what are we doing here?
It's also disrespectful.
No, I don't think it's disrespectful.
I think it's disrespectful.
The reason why I wouldn't say it's disrespectful is because it's their song and they knew what they were writing when they wrote the song.
Oh, okay.
So that's their vision.
I'm reading it wrong, yeah.
Yeah, that's their vision of the song. So I wouldn't say it's disrespectful, but I'm saying that in terms of delegating, if you're an artist, you've already spent time on writing the song, recording the song. Delegate. I'm not going to worry about how this video gets out there. That's not my business. Even with Touchline Truth, I had a similar experience.
Yes, Abafana Bahat.
Yeah.
I was the first AD on that one.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's the same thing. Is that like, you work on a lot of these music videos, and I just wish, if you look at Suits and Tie with Justin Timberlake and Jay-Z, that was directed by fucking Gonko.
David Fincher.
Fucking hey. That's a music video directed by a film director.
He also did Careless Whisper's music video.
But you see what I'm saying? If you look at David Fincher and his style, and you look at his style of directing, and you look at his style of David Fincher is a director who deals with editing in mind when he's directing. So if you look at a lot of his work, he's somebody who can go through 50 takes of a scene just because he's shooting it. He is someone who shoots full post. He's not, it's like, you know, when they say like fix it on post, he's like, no, fix it on set, full post. Do you get what I mean? And it's like, because that's his style, and that's sort of like, that's what I'm saying, is that like, I don't think Justin Timberlake was like, yeah, dude, listen, David, bro, I don't think that like what you're doing right now aligns with what I was thinking, man. You know, I think that maybe if we can just move this shot, like, I don't think, like, I wasn't there. You know what I mean? I wasn't there. But knowing the director of Fight Club, Gongo, Seven, it's like, I don't think you go to a director like that and you're like, yo, dude, listen, I don't think that I'm kind of fucking with your vision right now. So if you could just go different, you see what I mean? I think, and look, I will say I admire it about our South African artists, is that they want to be a lot more hands-on in terms of the overall package that they're providing, because it's the song, but the music video is part of the package of the song.
Exactly.
So I will admire that. I'm just saying that I wish there'd be a scenario where we could sort of give more trust to the creatives involved in creating. Obviously, don't give trust blindly. Don't give trust to somebody who you don't know their experience.
Yeah.
You know, but if you know the experience,
because then you're setting yourself up.
You know, I mean, even with like finessing, I wasn't the editor on that, but I was did for that. When I was did for that, I remember being conscious about sort of like the editor that needs to edit this needs to be able to understand how I've sort of set up this folder structure for him. Do you know what I mean? And similarly, that's how it should apply to music artists and how they treat their production teams. You should be like, I'm gonna set up my song in a way, or set up the meeting, because that's why there's pre-production as well. I'm like, we spoke about this. Dude. I told you that this is what I wanted to do. Now you're seeing it, and now you're like, yeah, dog. Like, I know you showed me the reference, but yeah, dog, I don't think I'm not. But dog, if you just trust me, I don't know much about music, bro. But you see, this one, I know a lot better than you do. I really do. If you just trust me, I really know a lot better than you do. So yeah, that's my experience in music videos. I'm not a huge fan, to be honest, just because of those factors that I've mentioned. I think I'm somebody who really likes freedom. I like playing a lot. I like sort of figuring it out as I go along.
With that being said, what's your favorite job of all time?
My favorite job that I've done of all time in terms of music videos?
No, life, whatever.
Oh no, that would be the animation I did for Disney, bro. Oof. Like by far, that's no contest. So the first commission production for Disney Plus in South Africa was an anthology series. Well, still is because it hasn't been released. Is an anthology series called Kizazi Moto.
And shit, am I gonna have to wait until it comes out to release this?
Not necessarily, because there's been public releases about it. You see what I mean? So I just won't get into the names of the episodes.
Great.
But basically, Kizazi Moto is an anthology series that's based on, if you think Love, Death, Robots, you know, it's short films by different directors. Even Black Mirror, actually, just an animation version of it, is where, but African stories. My director is from Uganda. Some of the people from the animation team were from France. You like, dude, and that's why I think it was the best production I've worked on, because I've literally worked with people from all over the world while sitting in my bedroom on my laptop. You know what I mean? For me, that's surreal. Shout out to Triggerfish. Shout out to Lani, who was the line producer on that job. She's the one who actually got me on that gig. And yeah, I think I learned a lot. It was my first ever animation. Animation is different because you make the shots as you go along. So by the time I arrived, so you get an animatic editor, and an animatic is essentially an edit of the story that sort of does that sort of gets you an idea of timing using storyboards, which are just pictures. So for instance, as I reach for this glass or as I reach for this mic, there'll be a frame from here. That's a storyboard. There's a frame from here. That's a picture. There's a frame with me holding the mic. That's another picture. And cutting that timing and just having the understanding. That's why I think the animatic editor was fantastic. Kusongezo Tia. Ephraim, I'll use your colonial name. um, yeah, he's fantastic, dude. Like, probably one of the most ingenious minds I've ever worked with in my life in terms of editors. He's fantastic, dude. The way he thinks, the way, like, he was able to come up with a film based on pictures, based on the understanding that I think this is how long it would take for me to take my hand from here to the mic. And being able to cut that timing. Because that's what editing is, it's timing. You know? So that's what I received from him. And then from there, you have different like disciplines after that. Because they're creating the shots now. So after the storyboard is like, okay, this is the idea. Now you get layout. Layout is basically blocking. It's like, okay, this is how we're going to put these characters in the background, in the environment that they're in. After layout, you get anim, which is animation. Now we're going to actually make these characters move. Because in layout, it's just gray blobs just floating. If they're walking, they're like, okay, from here, they're just going to float across. And that's the timing they set up for layout. But then in anim, now you start getting the way they walk. Now you start creating the character. Yeah, but not just the steps, because a step is a very simple thing. But if you realize how you and I walk differently as two different people, that's where it starts becoming more complex. And you literally have people in anim who are pitching themselves walking to reference the character that they're animating to the director to be like, this is how I think the character should walk. Do you see how beautiful that is?
This is a really funky character. He's a really vibrant dude, so I think he's got to have a sway in the step.
You see what I mean? That type of thing. And then from there, yeah, dude, I just love, as an editor, you get to really see, because everyone in all of those different departments sees their department and then they move on to the next thing. But I was literally, alongside the director, one of the few people that got to see every single step of the animation of the production. And that's why I say, hands down, probably the best thing I've ever worked on. Just because it was firstly the most challenging, because I had never done it before. But also secondly, because it was probably the production that I learned the most from outside of AFDA. Because everything else I did, the only thing I learned was how to maneuver and how to do the thing that I already knew how to do, or how to do the thing that I already knew how to do differently. But this was a thing where the complete setup was completely different. It was nothing like anything I've ever done.
All right. So, the one thing that I just want to ask you, just to sum this all up, is what motivates you?
Telling stories, man. Everything has a story. If it's visual, it has a story. I mean, for instance, to sort of put it into perspective, is when I edit, for instance, the shot that comes after the previous shot is always based on the movement of that previous shot. That's a story in itself. So if I'm moving my arm like this as I'm talking to you, I will go through all of that footage to find a shot of someone else moving like this to cut to that. If I don't find it, I'll find something similar to sort of give you that motion, that movement, because I feel like there's cuts outside of cuts. There's a cut in movement. There's a cut in everything. Everything has a cut. even if I'm editing to like a beat or to music, for instance, if there's a and understanding music helps a lot in understanding kicks and snares. If there's a kick, and like for instance, I just did this now, that's a cut for me on the kick without having to cut the actual clip. Do you see what I'm saying? Like if I'm performing a song right now, I'm performing, and I'm like boom on the kick, I don't have to cut because he cut for me in the shot. You know what I mean? So I keep that shot, hold on that shot, because there's no reason. Be able to justify every cut that you take, and that's what motivates me. Is being able to tell a story where there isn't a story. You know, beginning, middle, end, and that's all a story is. If I'm doing a corporate gig, which I do a lot of because that's what affords these Jordans, I'm like, okay, so in this corporate gig, the person I was interviewing spoke about the establishment of the company. That I know can't go at the end. It has to go either in the beginning or in the second act because that's the story that they're telling. They're telling the story of the company, not based on why we're there. If it's like, for instance, a seminar, or if it's like I don't know. It could be anything really when it comes to the corporate world. When you're telling, there's a story in that, and the people give you that story. It's just about finding it. And I think that's what motivates me, is being able to find a story in a way that nobody imagined it would turn out. You know, same with music videos. You know, half of the time I get footage. You know, it's and I'm just fortunate and blessed enough that the directors, who are a lot of my friends that I've worked with on these music videos, are people that know how I think, so they don't over prepare me for the script. But what a lot of people don't know is that before the music video is shot, half of the time I'm sitting with those directors and I'm like, okay, cool. How do you want this video to pan out so that you know what to shoot the next day? Because you can have a script, you can have a shot list. But I'm like, okay, but how do we go from this scene to this scene? What's the cut point?
Something you always say to me is, what is your beginning, middle, and end? Every single scene must have a beginning, middle, and end.
Exactly. I'm like, how do you go from this to this? How did we get there? I can't just be in the woods and then jiggy jiggy, I'm in the studio. Like, how did I get there? How did I get to that studio? And it's things like I mentioned earlier, movement. If I'm in the wild and I do like a young wipe with my hands when I'm performing, I don't know. You know, artists, they're very eccentric people. You know, they're very like bold people in their movements. You know, if I do a kick, like something as simple as me just like in studio is a cut point. And that's how I get you from the woods into the studio, because the cut matches. In editing terms, it's called um, fuck. It's called. I'll get the actual name for you later.
Match cut?
No, it's not a match cut. It's cut on action.
Cut on action. Okay.
It's cut on action. It's like there's an action. It's like it's the same. The logic applies to a single scene, where if I'm reaching for a glass, and then the next cut is the close up of me reaching for the glass, the movements are still one movement. So it's essentially one shot. It's one movement. But now it applies to even changing scenes. You know, you can apply it to a lot of things, where it's like there's if anyone watched the Jeffrey Dahmer series, there was a scene where he gets this mannequin from the store, and then he lays in bed with that mannequin, and then after he lays in bed with it, I think he leaves. Yeah, he leaves the house, and when he leaves the house, his grandmother is walking up the stairs with his linen, and now he tells his grandmother, "Don't worry about my linen. I'll change that myself. I like to change my linen myself." When she goes up to the room, as she gets into the room and she gets to the bed, it cuts. She goes to the because he's covered the mannequin with his blanket
Mm-hmm.
in the bed. And then as she opens up, it cuts to him a lot older, opening up the blankets to one of his victims.
Mm.
Do you see what I mean? Now, that tells you a lot because it's not a match cut, but it's saying that it's expressing that he's violent. It's expressing that his violent nature was sexual in some sense.
Mm.
Because if you look at that scene where his grandmother found that mannequin, it's a very sexual thing with that mannequin. Whereas with his victim, it's a very violent thing.
Mm.
So the violence and the sexuality and the sexual nature, rather, not the sexuality, but the sexual nature of his violent acts, it tells you that there was a certain arousement that he received from that.
And that's showcased purely through the editing. That's something that the visuals would not have shown you if the editing wasn't done in that manner.
You see what I mean? And I think that obviously this is an interpretation. I'm not saying that this is what the editor was thinking when he put those two shots together. I'm not saying this is what the director, because I didn't research that factor. But that was my interpretation of it as an editor.
Mm.
I was like the juxtaposition of his innocence, because remember with the mannequin, that was before he had committed even his first murder. No, he had committed his first murder by then. Actually, he had, because his first murder was in his family's home when his mother had left and his dad had left, and he spent a good 3 to 6 months in that home alone. That was the first one. But after that, he was so traumatized that he didn't do anything after that. And I think by the time he was with that mannequin in that bed, it was him coming to understand his sexuality that he had towards males, to the fact that he was actually gay. You know, I think it was that realization for him to be like, I find this attractive. And that mannequin had abs. It was like a fucking Greek god. You know what I mean? It was fucking Adonis. It was fucking, you know, and that tells a story in itself. And I think ultimately all it boils down to is that, man, there's a story in everything, in pictures. And I mean, that's why I also do photography. You know what I mean? I mean, mainly to learn about lighting, but there's a story in everything. You know, everything you do creatively that you're expecting input from the public from. Because you must remember, like I said, it's completely subjective. Our industry is completely subjective.
Yeah.
There's nothing that we ever do that can ever be objective to be like. I can say that Bullet Train was a fucking great film, and somebody tells me that shit was whack.
100%.
You know,
But listen, my bro, I'm sorry, we're running out of time.
No, that's fine. But like, yeah, I find passion in telling stories.
Thank you, man. I want to thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Okay.
I feel like there's a lot of young kids, particularly going through film school after right now, who need to understand that there's a path through this. And there's a means, and a lot of it is just hard work, ingenuity, and finding that source of mentorship wherever you can find it.
Also watching shit, man. I think you can work hard, but I think people in the film industry who are going into it need to realize that one of the greatest parts of your job is that you can say that watching TV is you at work. You know, watching film, watch shit, dude. And don't just watch shit that is English based.
Yeah.
Watch French films and watch the subtitles, because how it's performed in the French language is important as well. I don't like dubbed anything that's dubbed.
Yeah.
You know, watch French shit, watch Eastern film has to be some of the best film. And you actually taught me this, funny enough, through Old Boy. Whew. actually the Old Boy trilogy, which a
Korean
lot of
cinema,
people
the
don't know.
Vengeance trilogy.
Yeah, which a lot of people don't know is that it's actually from a trilogy.
Yeah, Sympathy for Lady Vengeance, Old Boy, and then Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance.
There we go. You know what I mean? It's like watch a lot of shit. That's the best advice I can give. Fuck film school. Get your education in film school, yes, to give you that background and to give you that sort of foundation. But that'll do nothing for you if you don't watch shit. Watch a lot of and watch different shit. Don't watch a lot of the same shit. Don't watch gang rom-coms and think, I kind of get how film works now. You know. But yeah, that's how I would tie it up for you, bro.
Thank you so much, man. And guys, if you like more of this kind of stuff, please like and subscribe the page, and we'll see you for the next podcast.